All right, it looks like we're good now, so that's awesome. And I got the recording. Cool. Well, I just wrote down a few notes from our great conversation the other day when we were just text chatting, and I kind of wanted to talk about, like, hang on, I put all my little notes in my calendar of this. Oh, come on now. Day. I literally just woke up and was able to feed the cat, so I'm still like collecting myself. Usually I have the entire morning until noon blocked off in my day for like personal stuff. So waking up, personal development, if I wanted to go to the, yoga that morning or something like that. And then I usually start taking work at noon. So right. I like don't even have my hair. I was like,
that's awesome.
So funny. So, okay, here it is. Oh, yeah. Okay, so first of all, I want to find out all about your business, and it says Magic and Mindset Mentor, and I remember you asked me like what I thought about magic and crystals, so I definitely want to dig into that. And then the reason why I immediately like cyber stalked all your business is because it says you help people that have mental illness.
Yeah.
That is incredible because so many people are not only diagnosed or whatever, but I think a lot of people are subclinical and do not pursue care because of stigma, of course.
Yeah.
But also, it's not just stigma. I mean, I've been like in and I bounced right the hell back out of like the mental health system because I couldn't handle the kinds of medication and their method of treatment of it. And I felt like all my personal agency was removed from me by having this label. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to handle this myself because I cannot deal with medical people giving me drugs that they don't know what it does. And it was giving me like the idea, the concept of side effects is BS. Those are just effects that you do not want.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of side effects and I didn't want to be removed of that agency anymore. So I was like, I'm just going to wean myself off of this stuff that you say I can never be off of again.
Yeah.
I don't encourage or discourage people from trying what I tried because I know that medications help a lot of people. But since it didn't help me, like, I'm like, you don't have to do what people tell you to do necessarily. If you can like hold your shit together and maintain your responsibilities, like it's something I was willing to accept.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love working with women with mental illness because I have like a slew of them myself. Like I've been in and out of things since I was 12. Like I had issues. And at one point, I was on like 8 or 9 different medications, high dosages of them all, and I was 13.
Okay.
And I was a zombie. And so like I am definitely like I'm still all for pharmaceuticals. Like for me personally, I am at a place in my life where like I still need an antidepressant in addition to my practice. And like that's just me. But like so yes, there are like tons of people that can go off medication and be safe. And like the one thing that I always tell people, I am all good with you seeing a therapist, like medication, like I'm just one person and you need a support team. Because that's what's really helped me and what's funny about the fact that I work with women in mental illness. So literally I just started this business 2 weeks ago, right?
Nice.
And I've had like a lot of issues with the job that I have now in corporate America, like an issue after issue for the last like a couple of weeks, and I've been there for a year. Well, between this week and last week, I asked for a leave of absence 4 different times for mental illness, and I actually told my like head of HR suicidal ideation, like safe, like I can't pull it together and come into work, like I need to take care of myself, I need a leave of absence, it doesn't have to be paid, I just need to know that like my job will be there back. And I asked 4 separate times in 2 weeks and was denied.
They are not allowed. Is FMLA canceled or something?
Not canceled, but the company where I work, FMLA, you're not eligible until you've been there for 1 year. October next month was my 1 year. But I knew that if I stayed, like, it was really rough. Like, I quit the day, my birthday was on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, the 27th, and I quit on the 28th. So early ago, I just stopped going to work because the 28th I woke up and was like researching how many of something I have to take to, you know what I mean? So like and that's like where I start getting like really personal and vulnerable, like in my own business, because like I have mental illness too. And I have to like take care of myself, and like being able to surround myself with like that are really striving to do like the same thing. Because like my wife, for example, she wouldn't have quit. She would have just kept going. Because, you know, some people are like that. And that's basically like my main mission is like, if something is like causing you harm and becoming an obstacle, like then that needs to be removed, whether it's like emotional or situational, whatever. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm that kind of person that's just going to continue to plow on. So it just how people, you know, orient their perspective and priorities or whatever. I'm like, well, I'm the sole breadwinner, so I soldier on, right? You know, so, but that led me to full on burnout. Like when the final straw was on, like the camel's back, like everything in every area of my life fell apart. I was fully burned out. I had to go back and live with my parents when I was 40.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
In Michigan. I was like, so they live just outside of Flint. So I'm sure you're aware of how depressed that area is. There was no work to be had. I was living on our farm with my retired parents. It was peaceful. We'll say peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's rough. It can be rough, but because I'm the main breadwinner. Like I was making like between 60 and 70 where I was working, and I just quit. And now I'm kind of like, okay, well, we're going headfirst into this business now.
Yeah. The skills we get from corporate are so transferable. I mean, where I have trouble in my business, because fortunately, my husband is the breadwinner now, new husband. I know when everything burned down, it like really burned down. So anyway, I got remarried ultimately, and my husband makes enough money that I don't have to earn income now. So at first I was relieved. I'm like, oh good, I don't have to have the pressure. But then of course I was a little bored, and I'm like, you know, I really could pursue my side hustle, like, and make it into something. So I've been working on that, but I give myself maybe too much slack. And it's hard to be the boss of myself. And so I have to have two like little hats. I'm like, okay, now I'm the boss hat. I'm going to plan out what my employee has to do. And then I have my schedule of the day. So I'm just kind of coming on board with this. But I guess I've been doing my coaching in nutrition and fitness for about 6 years.
Okay, awesome.
And I've just been serious about it for the last 2 years. Of being my own brand, of developing my own content, getting my independent certifications that weren't like just a license to resell products and stuff like that. So it's been a little bit of a road, but I feel like it has grown though out of this mental strain and all my experiences of dealing with chronic stress and burnout. And so basically that's the foundation. That's like the problem that I'm trying to solve for people who are in corporate, who are under this incredible amount of stress, and they're sitting all the time at a desk, and then there's nowhere for those stress chemicals to go. So that cascades into all the health problems. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to first I started out, I'm like, oh, exercise is the key, because I was doing exercise, right? And then nutrition came into it, because of course they go hand in hand. So now I'm like, okay, nutrition and fitness to deal with chronic stress. for people who are like basically me. So I'm like, woohoo. So you're like 2 weeks in, I'm like 2 years in, and I'm just basically rolling out.
That's crazy. But like, that's amazing what you do. And that's so necessary. Cause like I've done corporate for the last however many years. And I haven't worked at a place more than a year, like at all. And like, granted, I'm 26, but still, like, I get burnt out. I can't do it. And like, you know, they'll try to offer standing desks, and I'm like, okay, well, that's nice, but I'm still chained to this computer in this section of this big sales floor where people won't shut up.
Right. And there's barely any natural light, probably.
None. Yeah. And I actually had someone, so I have seasonal affective disorder on top of the depression. Like in winter months, that's when most of my trauma happened. So I've always had a lamp that I keep at my office, and it's a light fixie lamp for the winter months. And so like I had so many people ask me if I was tanning, and I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not tanning.
People.
So depressing, and I hate my life.
It's funny how people don't recognize stuff. Like it's outside of their awareness, and therefore when they see something, it's like they can't even place it.
Right. Like they don't know all of these different self-care things exist, which is part of like what it was like, there's so many little things that are just little tiny tweaks to take care of yourself, and like it can make a world of difference. Like so crystals, I believe that every single crystal has metaphysical properties, and they have inside them that you can hold and direct and harness and cleanse and all of that. So I have a bowl full of crystals that are all good for wealth, abundance, prosperity, luck, fortune, money, and I call it my money bowl. And I've always kept it at my desk area, my little work area. And people would always say, oh, you know, oh, those are so cool. And then they would put their hands all over them, and I'd have to go home and clean them. But I mean, I also don't want to be rude, because I also like want to teach them about it. So I would like be able to tell them a little bit about it. And it was always like just this sideways look of like, you really believe that? Like, hey, you're crazy. And I'm like, you know what? Even if I am crazy, the placebo effect makes me better. So,
thank you. Exactly. The placebo effect is a real effect. Just my side effects are real effects.
When I'm super, super stressed, my body will start shutting down. I will keep going until my body shuts itself down. And so that, I think that's a piece of that too, because placebo effects, like I'll start playing the hypochondriac and go to doctor after doctor, but it's really just because I don't want to work anymore.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you perceive metaphysical properties in the crystals. What do you feel is the basis, like the physical basis of it? Does it have, I mean, like, where do you feel that that those characteristics are derived? Like, how are they embodied in the crystal, or just tell me all about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. Okay, so like all of the crystals, I mean, obviously like they come from Earth. And so I strongly, strongly believe in like the magic of the Earth, the universe of the Earth. Part of my main like spiritual belief is that like we were that Mother Earth is who I worship, basically. And so the universe, but more importantly, the Earth. And so all of these crystals that we have, they come from the Earth. And yes, sometimes they can be super incredibly highly processed and whatnot, but it's also like this like it's Earth magic almost. You know what I mean? Like the Earth is spitting out these divine bits of itself and different colors and shapes and properties. And so that's kind of where I believe that, you know, their magic and energy and vibration come from, because the Earth is like literally birthing them.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love it. So it doesn't really have to do with the crystalline structure or vibrations that are coming out of it based on the, you know, chemical makeup of the individual crystals. Mm-hmm. It's not really based on that.
So I'm sure that it is. It's not something that I've personally studied. I'm a little science at it. Um, I'm not good at science at all. Full disclosure, I cheated my way through high school biology. I know what photosynthesis is. It's something that I'm working on and I'm learning and I'm very interested in, like as far as chemical composition. But as far as like the way that I'm able to kind of wrap my head around it, because basically like these things are divine, and I think that it takes a lot of hard work and meditation and practice to like totally get them and understand them. And so for me, like the way that I wrap my head around them is that, you know, they're created by the earth and then birthed.
Well, I think that's amazing, and I wasn't challenging you in any way. I mean, I tell people the same thing. You don't need to know the science of something to be able to like use it. You don't need to know how electricity works to friggin' plug something in, right? You know, and people don't need to know like the hormonal implications of every bite of food that goes into their mouth and how their body processes that into movement. You know, you just pick up the fork and put it in your mouth and then you go run around. Right. So yeah, I think that, you know, just taking things at face value and how they work in your life is as much or maybe more important to just our regular everyday life.
Yeah. I think it's a lot more authentic too, because I'm super nerdy and it's not that I'm like uneducated. I just don't know anything. But like, I want to know. Like I have books on quantum physics and quantum theory, because like even though I don't get like the basics of chemistry, like that stuff, like theory stuff is still really, really super interesting to me. And so that's a piece of it that I like too, is that I'm always a student. I'm always a student. I'm always going to be a student. I'm never going to stop learning. And that's part of why I'm wanting to be self-employed too and work.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up quantum theory, because that's a little bit more, I'm super nerdy and I come from a science background before I was sadly not really able to pursue my original college plans. And then I kind of went into corporate after that. Oh, are you still there? Nice. Oh, you're back. Yay.
Sorry.
That's okay. No problem. I have lots of little doodles. I'm addicted to the internet. So I always have a million tabs open. I'm like, no problemo.
Okay, good. Okay, so physics.
I was about to tell you a little bit about what I thought about quantum stuff and how that relates to what you were talking about. I was super nerdy, and so I do want to like always, well, I just do not want to necessarily, but I always come at it from like, how does that happen? Like, what is the reason or whatever? And I try to like take it apart and kind of, I think of it as a scientific way and like break it into its smaller and smaller components, which is literally exactly how they're researching quantum like physics. They're breaking things down into such small parts and then seeing what those little bitty parts do.
Right.
So when they finally got down to like the smallest particles that they've been able to determine so far, and then when they're observing them, they like pop in and out of physical form between energy and matter. And they kind of, it's the same thing. It's like just looking at it from a different angle almost. It kind of just pops into and out of existence physically. Otherwise, it's like an energy. And so the question then becomes, what are these individual things like kind of suspended in? Like, what is the like physical matrix that like makes these things that they move inside of?
Right.
And it just turns out to be like, they're basically calling it the field of energy. The energy is everywhere, and at any given moment, matter can like kind of turn a little sideways and then be energy, and then kind of somewhere else from nothing comes a thing, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so this energy field is basically everywhere and every when, because time doesn't exist on that tiny scale.
Right. So is that the same as quantum foam, or is that separate?
I'm not totally sure. I've heard that phrase, but I don't know what they're referring to. So I wouldn't want to speculate, but maybe.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so that within this field or whatever, if anything is connected, then everything is connected. Because there's always space between, you've heard that within any given molecule, there's more space than stuff.
Right.
Because it takes up, like, say, this much, like a tiny thing way down here is the actual electron. Electrons are so incredibly small. It's like a marble flying around in our solar system.
Right.
So there's a ton of space in there. So if we consider those kinds of relationships connected, then there's no not connectedness.
Right.
So in that field and in energy where like time and distance are not a relevant factor, how things move is basically magnetism and gravity kind of thing. And so, okay, so to bring it back up to our real life, our heart is run on an electric charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it go boom, boom. It's like, here's the electricity, and then there's where the other side of that charge is going, and it crosses over, and it makes that pumping action.
Mm-hmm.
Well, an electromagnet basically works the same way. It creates a charge from one side and it goes to the other, and we just use the magnetism around that instead of pumping like a thing, like a machine or whatever. Like, mm-hmm. It creates this magnetic field, an electromagnet. So when the electricity's on, it's magnetic, and when the electricity's off, the magnetism stops. Unlike a natural magnet, which is always got its poles, it's kind of always on. Right. But an electromagnet, you can turn it on and off. So our heart is generating this magnetic field just exactly the way that our brain waves, when you get like an EEG, those are quite a bit weaker in magnitude and strength. The EEG ones are not as strong as the heart ones. The heart ones are like 100 or some amount times stronger. Right. And so where the EEGs, they have to stick things on your head to perceive it. They've been able to measure like well outside your body, 2 to maybe 4 feet outside of someone's body. A machine could pick up the magnetic field that's generated by a person's heart.
Wow.
And that's just what a machine that like our technology can invent. Like, right. It doesn't end, that it just becomes like more faint. Mm-hmm. The same way that we can see the light from stars, however many bazillion, million, trillion miles away that they are, like it's just fainter. Right. And if we get a stronger telescope, we can see ones that are further away, or the ones that are the same, we see them brighter. So that's how I would perceive like the magnetic field generated by our heart, that it's kind of just going out and out into the field of quantum everything. That's and like here's where it like diversifies away from the strictest of science, but it's been speculated and there's research being done that our intentions and emotions are somehow coded into the pattern of our heart rhythm. Mm-hmm. So you've heard about heart rate.
Right.
And that's the average amount of beats at any given time, like you say in beats per minute. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of an average. The reason why it's an average is because it actually changes ever so slightly in between the boom. There's an amount of time before the next boom.
Right.
That amount of time in there varies ever so slightly between each beat. And that's called heart rate variability. That variability, when it's more variable, you're more flexible maybe, and when it's like more the same, it's more rigid. Mm-hmm. So the flexibility reflects our parasympathetic nervous system, and the more metronome-like it is, the more steady and the same in between it is, the more that we're in the sympathetic nervous system, which is the stress reaction.
Huh.
So you would think that, you know, having your heartbeat like on rhythm all the time, like intuitively, you might think that that would be good. But in fact, that's where we're more like in a stress situation. So being able to, I have all these cool little gadgets that I keep to like do little tests. I have like a heart rate monitor that's on a strap for my chest. And I just recently got one. I think it's out in the living room, that connects to the ear, and it gives you like real-time feedback, like biofeedback on this. So when someone's meditating, they can see what their actual physiological reactions are. It's incredibly fascinating. And so I'm just like, as a lay science citizen, you know, I'm just kind of digging into this and doing experiments myself and seeing what people in our community, you know, are kind of like reaching out and finding what more about the human potential is.
Right.
Yeah. And being like, okay, so how do these metaphysical concepts that have been with us since ever, and it's usually manifested in religion,
right,
but now they're coming to a point in science where everything's coming back around.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
Like, I know, like, for me, like, I really don't think about like my body as a piece of it, although obviously I should. That's kind of where I'm at in my own like personal development. Like, so my mind and my soul is like pretty okay, but like looking at how my body reacts to that, what other work does my body need to do? Because like, I'll be the first to tell you, I love laying on the couch and eating pizza. So like, but that's really beautiful, and definitely a very, very important part of like self-care is the physical aspect.
Yeah, for sure. And when people have something that they can, and I think this is especially true for Western people, they want to kind of see the proof of it.
Yes.
And know why am I doing this, especially when it feels awkward or weird. And then also too, I think that because of our like hyper religious kind of Puritan, you know, we have to feel bad to be good or something. Like I feel like it's my mission to help erode that. I think that people should feel good to feel good, and not have to feel like that they need to suffer to take care, you know, to be like, especially when you say talking about self-care and you mentioned food as a form of like, I'm, you know, maybe self-soothing, maybe I'm stretching there, but
no,
this is where this is my total jam. How the things that we put into our body are assimilated by our body, and the hormonal cascades and the neurological cascades and the feedback loop between our microbiome, which is basically we're symbiotic beings with this organization of bacteria that resides all over our body. We mostly hear about it in our digestive tract, but it's also on our skin. It's in any orifice on our body, has its own bacterial colony that we're symbiotic with them. Like they can't live without us, and we can't really live without them. If they get sick, we're gonna get sick. If we don't feed them right, they get sick. If we don't feed them the food that they need, or if we feed them stuff that makes the bacterial colonies be like in a different proportion, it affects our immune system. Our immune system is directly regulated by the metabolism of this bacterial colony. Those metabolites, like when we breathe out carbon dioxide, like part of their metabolism is picked up by all our immune cells that are in our digestive tract. And so I don't even know where I was going with this. Oh, food, how we care for ourselves. So part of my mission also in being a nutrition coach is helping people who experience stress not necessarily come at it head on, but be like, okay, we're going to try some other things. We're going to add some stuff into your, you know, daily snacks or something that's going to help make your gut bacteria feel better. And then therefore, it's going to stop causing a stress reaction from that being off maybe. And then that will help reduce the allostatic stress load, that you can have more energy and resources to deal with like whatever emotional aspects are going on, right?
Yeah.
So I come at it sideways. Or
No.
sometimes if people are struggling with, you know, food and stuff, and they're like, I'm not ready to give up whatever. I'm like, okay, let's don't give up anything. Let's just add something somewhere else and see if that thing resolves itself. Sometimes it's like a log jam where if you just move a few things, then everything starts flowing again and you just don't even have to try, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like all about, some people call it holistic. I don't really use that word, but like everything has its impact. And
Yeah.
if you're having a problem over here, maybe you can dig at it from this side.
No, absolutely. That totally makes sense. Do you agree with like blood type diet kind of thing, like different things for different blood types?
Well, I'll say this. Nutrition science is a very new thing. It's kind of like where metallurgy was in the Middle Ages,
Okay.
right? We have advanced so much in so many other areas and really drilled down, and we know the ins and outs of everything. But the human body is a complex system, and we're just like peeling back the layers still. And every time we peel back the layers of knowing how this works, we find out there's another whole subsystem. We really don't know how every bit of everything works yet.
Right.
And also, new things are happening in our environment that have never happened before, so it's a little bit of a moving target.
Yeah.
When we're talking about processed foods and sedentary lifestyles, like we're kind of back to square two. Not necessarily square one, but we're like back to square two almost.
Right.
So people are still out trying things. And bro science goes first. Bro science is kind of like the cutting edge, individual people trying things on themselves, talking with other people, seeing what they have tried and what happened to them. And then they get together. And then there's enough buzz that science says, okay, well, this is something that now we have enough traction that we
Right.
can try to figure out. So that's where I think like all these diets are.
Right.
The other thing that's new that's come into the mix that's kind of muddying the waters is advertising and trying to monetize the food system and trying to monetize people being insecure about their bodies. And so this demonizes in kind of like a circle any kind of individual component of food. So for a while it was like fats are bad, everything's fat free. Now
Right.
it's like carbs are bad, everything's got to be carb free or alternative or whatever. And then now people are fighting about what fats are good or bad. Is butter, is oil bad? Do we supposed to eat things raw? Is meat even good? What about all the hormones and right? So it's a little bit of a moving target. And I think that anything that people try to do to address their health is going to work for a short amount of time.
Right.
And then the body's going to want to bounce back into homeostasis.
Right.
So unless it's something that someone's going to be able to sustain indefinitely, like it becomes part of their regular lifestyle, I would suggest don't even bother to try.
Yeah. That, like, I think it's definitely person-based. It makes a lot more sense that it's very person-based and not so much like, this is wrong, this is right. Because I've watched tons of documentaries. I went through a vegetarian period. So I'm A positive. My blood type is A positive. And I don't necessarily subscribe to it. Like, I've seen research for it and I've seen research against it. I'm kind of neutral, but I do, a lot of the research says about A positive is like true for myself. It might not be for others, which is fine. But like, so I have IBD, and meat, my body hates meat, especially red meat. It tears my stomach up. And then what I also thought was really, really interesting. So as far as science goes, when you've experienced trauma in your life, your body produces extra cortisol, and that hormone starts killing cells in the hippocampus, which is where like memory is. So I've read these studies where like when you've experienced trauma, it's safe to assume that you have a crappy memory because your hippocampus cells are deteriorating. So what I thought was really incredibly interesting, because I am a complete space cadet, I don't ever remember anything. Like if you ask me what I did 10 minutes ago, I probably can't tell you, kind of thing. What I learned is that I found some research, and I haven't found anything against it, but I also haven't looked thoroughly. But it says that people with A positive also typically produce more cortisol. So I have that in addition to the trauma killing hippocampus cells, which totally makes sense for me in my life because I'm oblivious to the world around me half the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that you said is absolutely correct. I mean, when it gets kind of translated into layperson's terms, you know, maybe saying that the cells are being killed off by cortisol is not the most like scientifically correct way to like perceive it. But you're correct that this cortisol and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is being set into a negative feedback loop. So your perceptions of it are absolutely spot on. That is what happens when you experience trauma, and actually any kind of chronic stress, corporate stress, where that cortisol does not get used up by physically fleeing or fighting. Like it doesn't get used up by the muscles when we're sitting on our butts in our chair, stressing about like deadlines, whatever has happened at work. And then also our personal life at home, like maybe things happen during the day and you're not able to address them because you're at work.
Right.
And those have the same exact impact on that HPA axis that's going between your gut microbiome and your immune system and through, you know, your stress system.
So that makes sense.
And it's not getting used up. So it's like corroding. It's in addition to affecting your memory, it's affecting your insulin sensitivity. So it's causing someone to be susceptible to diabetes. Cancer is generally associated with, especially colon cancer, from what I'm talking about. So these kinds of things are devastating to people's health, and I just want to work with that community and give them things that are like little tools that they can incorporate into their everyday life and become habitual, like the new normal, so that they don't have to stick to something that's restrictive forever, that you're like, I'm going to have to be hungry forever. That's ridiculous.
Yes.
Why should you have to feel bad to be healthy? It doesn't even make any sense. So I work with like the way that our body actually works, and I help people on an individual basis figure out, like you say, what works for them. It's like an experiment. And I work with people like for a new habit, I'll be like, well, if they're one-to-one, then I help them pick the habit. But I have a 52-week program that every 2 weeks there's a new habit that's kind of like, it's like a curriculum and it kind of builds on itself. We'll be like, okay, for 2 weeks, we're just going to focus on this one thing. And that's all you have to do is just do this one thing every day. And at the end of it, we'll see what it was like. And we'll decide, you know, and some things are literally an experiment, maybe just for the 2 weeks or maybe just for one day. And we'll be like, okay, so now you have this experience. You know what it felt like what the results were that you noticed. And now we're going to move on. We're either going to keep on doing that, or maybe that was just to find out what happened. And then we move on to the next one. And then by the end of the year, it's almost like magic. Like, it's like, I lost, 20 pounds this year and I didn't even do anything. You feel like you didn't even do anything. So, I just want people to feel like there's something that they can try that's not going to make them feel bad or restricted or like a failure or like it's not for them and they have to force themselves to fit into this mold. I personally am vegetarian. And while I encourage people to eat more plants because of the fiber content in it, like everyone has to find their own balance.
Oh,
and
for
it has to do with their culture too. Food's not just only about nourishing our body. It's about interacting with other people. And in fact, like you say, it's our connection to the earth itself.
Yeah.
Our food is vitally important psychologically and socially. It's not just like we're putting fuel in a machine. It's not
Right.
like that at all. How you feel while you're eating is almost as important as what you're eating in the first place.
Yeah.
There have
Absolutely.
been numerous scientific studies and papers, I've read several, that associate like having a diet mentality with complete systemic breakdown. I mean, like osteoporosis, all kinds of things, just from feeling guilty about eating food or worrying about what you're supposed to be eating all the time. That alone will really make you sick and make your bones degrade.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
But it also absolutely makes sense. I mean, where else is all of that stress gonna go? Like, of course you have some kind of like bodily response. Like when I would be too stressed out at work to the point to where my body would just literally start shutting down. Like I would get the flu, or I would get a cold, or I would somehow manage to get ill enough to where I couldn't go into work, and my body would force itself to shut down for me to take that break.
Right. So if you think about it, your body is trying to tell you things. Your body is communicating with you in the only way that it can. And a lot of people don't, it's like we said, it's outside of their awareness of that it's even a thing to notice,
Right.
that they can't hear it, even when it's screaming,
Right.
you know? So, yeah, it's so important. And the emotions surrounding our body are so manipulated.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's my mission. I don't know. It's like a calling, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm like, I'm supposed to do this. And I'm so afraid. And that's how I know that it's so important.
Right. That's awesome though. I love that. I love that you're doing that because it's so, so, so important. And that's like literally like it shouldn't be the last thing of like my checklist of things to like get my shit together on. You know what I mean?
Your
Like,
body, you mean?
yeah, like fitness and nutrition. And like, if I want to be vegetarian because I absolutely hate eating meat, then why am I still eating meat?
Mm.
You know? Because like for me, like it's a physical thing, but it's also an ethical thing, like meat. And that's just for me personally. Obviously, like other people, like their body needs meat to function properly, and that's fine. But I love all the animals. But yeah, I mean, and it's like, why do we trick ourselves into this cycle of like eating what's not good for us? Because it's like pleasure centered, or it's socially acceptable, or it's not socially acceptable to be vegetarian. Like, oh, like because I've had problems like going out and trying to eat somewhere and be vegetarian.
For
I
sure.
imagine vegan, like that would be terrible. And eventually, like I'd love to be vegan, but like I love cheese, but I hate hormones. You know what I mean? Um,
I know just what you mean. I've been vegetarian for over 30 years.
mm,
Yeah. And I'm like, how old am I? And like, since I was a teenager, before I graduated from high school, I started becoming vegetarian.
mhm.
And I'm still stuck on cheese. And I go back and forth on eggs. And some of the reason I go back and forth on eggs is because I forget exactly what it is, but um, like I felt like it helped with my mental health to
Mhm.
have some of the nutrients. It was like an easy source to get it when
Yeah,
sometimes I'm not good about eating. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Sometimes when you're in that place, like you forget to eat, you forget to shower, you forget to comb your hair, you forget to brush your teeth.
Yeah.
So
And like protein's important, like especially when you are vegetarian.
there's actually, I mean, there is protein in eggs, but it's like 6 or 7 grams per egg. It's not a massive amount. Like it's not the best source in the whole universe of protein.
Yeah. No, it's not. I didn't know it was that low. See?
I know. So, well, I think a lot of people hear a lot about the words about nutrition, but don't really have a good grasp of what they mean. Like, what is a protein? What is a carb? What, people kind of know what fat is. That's a little bit easy, but then it has that double meaning of, is it a nutritional fat, or is it a biological like fat cell, or is it a chemical lipid or something, so it can be confusing with all the terms and stuff. I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, anyways, those things are not food. You don't I mean, they say it on the cooking shows that, oh, you have your protein with it, but no food is just one macronutrient. Everything has some of everything in it almost.
Right.
So you can definitely get protein from plants. You definitely get some kind of fats in meat. Everything is usually a mix of 2 or 3 of those things.
That makes sense.
It's easier to talk to people in realistic terms about like things they're familiar with. So, and not in grams. Who knows how a gram of something looks like? How would you even know? So people trying to figure it out for themselves about what's a healthy diet, talking about macros, and if it fits your macros or whatever, it's too complex for every day.
Yeah, my wife did something like that. She actually hired a nutritionist, and she worked with her on a macronutrient level, and like she was very limited on what she could.
It's a lot of math too. And I mean, do we really need to be doing a lot of math and work? And that brings us back to focusing on like obsessing about the food, which is not super healthy in and of itself. Like it should be almost automatic. So I work with people with hand size portions. So I'll be like, okay, knowing that things are kind of some of everything, let's don't worry about how many grams of protein and how many grams of carb a bean has. Let's just say that if you're vegetarian, that's one of your proteins, and you'll have like 1 to 2 palm-sized amounts of it, and that's like your servings. And if you have like 1 to 2 things of protein and 1 to 2 things, if you make this much of this is a vegetable, and like if you have fats in it, whether it be an oil or a solid base of fat, then it might be about the size of your thumb. Like that's about a serving. So people can, even if they're in a restaurant, kind of estimate a food on their plate, how much of it they want to eat, being like, okay, this amount is about the size of my hand. And then they can kind of keep a running tally just based on their plate, and then be able to intuitively know what to select.
Right.
You know, to have a balanced like plate every time. And then that's actually the second step. I'm just like, why don't you just eat slowly until, like really try to eat slowly and don't even worry about however much that is. Just stop when you're ready to stop. Just do it super slow.
Right.
And then after that's been for 2 weeks, then I'm like, okay, so now that you kind of have gotten a few techniques to eat slow, think about when you're like 80% full instead of when you naturally would stop when you're like 100% full.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're starting to listen to their body and intuitively realize when they have a satiation and giving their body a chance to be satisfied, even if it's a piece of pizza. Like if you took 20 minutes to eat one slice, like how many slices do you think that you would probably eat all told? If you had no restrictions on the whole pizza, like if it took you 20 minutes to eat one slice, we might only eat, it would take us an hour to eat 3 slices. I would be moving on with my day.
Yeah.
So you're already kind of like self-limited in what you're psychologically going to be into.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost doesn't make any difference what you eat at that point, because you're intuitively letting your body tell you those things and being able to take a moment in between bites to listen to your body. So I just work with people that way, because they're trying to measure and count and make everything come out even. So your ratios it's too much for any normal person.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're getting paid as an athlete to look a certain way or perform athletically, that's a different thing. Then that's your job, right? And you might even hire someone to do that for you.
Right.
But for a normal person, it's too much.
No. Yeah, we had a food scale in the kitchen, and she would have to weigh everything. And I'm like, I'm not about that. I'm not like, if it feels good, do it. Simple as that.
Right. But then you have to pay attention to what actually feels good.
Right.
And sometimes we shut off listening to our body because we don't really know that it's saying stuff. Like it's not speaking a language that we're attuned to yet. So that's what I'm about.
I love it.
Yeah, and it really goes with your niche too, because mental health is pretty directly related to lifestyle choices. And
Absolutely.
especially if people are like subclinical or like kind of on the fence about whether they should try a medication, it's kind of like the similar thing. Like if you're borderline diabetes, are you just gonna, maybe you do just want to jump on medication, but some people are like, I'm gonna try to do something first before I have to take shots for the rest of my life, and I feel like it's the same thing with pharmaceuticals, although it's not very PC to say that, but I feel like it's the same thing. Like
Yeah.
the pendulum has swung too far into it's okay to take medications, but like you should try the other things first. And it's the
Right.
same thing with weight loss. Like it's become not so much of a stigma to have like lap band or some kind of surgery to have
Yeah.
weight loss surgery,
Yeah.
but it's quite dangerous. It's extreme measures. And some people are like, am I going to go this surgery route or am I going to try some other kind of lifestyle habits? Well, honestly, if they get the surgery, they're going to be forced into the lifestyle habits anyways. You might as well start out trying it, and then maybe you can avoid all the complications and risks of surgery.
Right.
So, and I don't say that lightly. My dad is recovering from sleeve tube or something. It's a gastro sleeve surgery. It's really rough, and he has lost some amount of weight, enough to get his knees and all the surgeries that he needed for his skeletal system, but he's not thin. He still weighs probably pushing 300 pounds.
My goodness.
Yeah, so it's not even necessarily a solution, and I want to give people an out.
Yeah.
It's so important before they take these extreme measures, these medications that may have effects that can't be reversed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyways, but I work with people on the psychological aspect too of that heart-based feelings about themselves and what is being put in from their emotions about it, like what they're filling their field with. Oh, this is the other thing I wanted to tell you about the field. Other people can sense this. You know that when you walk into a room and people have been angry there or whatever, and you can still feel it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's that energy, and that the emotions I feel like the emotions encoded into that magnetic field are still like in the energy of that literal physical area, and other people can pick up on that. So in the same way, a person can influence other people in positive heart-based feelings of care, compassion, appreciation. Like a person can intentionally permeate the field with this. It can be directed because the quantum field is without time and without like physical directionality.
Right.
Like you can send this heart-based intentions out into wherever, into the earth, into weather-torn areas, war-torn areas.
I love
People
that.
that are struggling. I love it too. And so I found out more about this and tried to get a little bit of meditation training so that I can put this out for people when they're struggling.
Right.
Like I can influence their field and bring them into coherence, where that's one less stress that they have to cope with when they have other things going on.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that makes so much sense because like for me, like I would literally just call that magic. Like I would call that like sending my energy out into the world and putting it in like the scientific frame of mind. Like it's just another way to explain it. And I think that's really, really incredibly beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
it also makes a lot of sense like when you think about people who are empaths. Like I'm a huge, huge, huge empath. And I always have thought of it as like, oh, like other people's like residual energy is rubbed off on me and I need to clean it off because it feels gross. And to like put that in they've like interrupted my magnetic field, like, there's stuff around them that they're putting out that I'm picking up. And it's just like, I think it's really awesome that there's so many different ways to explain it. And I know you mentioned like religion earlier, like it clicked so much because it's literally 100 different explanations to try and explain what's going on. But like the scientific, like you can't argue with science. Like if the earth is doing something, there's no like, oh no, I don't think that's really happening. Like there are quantifiable, measurable pieces.
Exactly.
So like, yes, magic is real. It's just electromagnetics.
Yeah, and I was curious again about the crystals. I'm speculating at this point that something about the crystalline structure and or the kinds of molecules that it's composed of and their frequency or whatever, if they focus this energy, this field energy in different ways, and that's their mechanism. Now I'm wildly speculating, but just from what I know of crystals and like their structures, internal structures, it just makes me wonder if that's the mechanism or the way that people feel different when they're holding them.
That's really interesting. I wonder if there's any research done on that.
I have no idea. It'd be cool to find out.
Let me know if you find anything, because I want to do some digging too. I do know that different shape help. So it's not so much with like raw crystals. They are like processed, but they're like cut down, whether by a machine or a person. And so one of like the strongest crystal shapes is a pyramid, because I'm on my phone, so I'm holding it with one hand. But like if you have a pyramid, like no matter how hard you push on one side, it's not going to collapse. It is a stable, solid structure. That's another piece of what crystals can do is their shape, serve different purposes. So like pyramids are a really big deal in crystals. Crystal points are also where one is more of a flat, other end it's kind of like shaft like, and so it's a point, one is pointed. And so a lot of people use that in crystal grids to help like direct the energy of the crystals, like using the point to kind of like push that out. A lot of people will use points when they're doing Reiki or crystal healing, and connecting crystals to each of the chakra. Each one of your 7 major chakras has a basically like assigned crystal that helps it like recharge and reprogram. So crystals are also used that way too.
Wow, that's so cool. How interesting. That is fascinating to me. Like I said, I know very little about it, and everything I'm looking at it through my little scientific, like, why is it like that? But you know what? We don't have to necessarily know why, because maybe it doesn't even matter. It could, like you say, be the placebo effect, and it's just our intentions.
Right.
And it helps us focus our intention. And it's not so much whatever it is. It could be my mouse. I
Right.
feel like through my mouse, I can access information. So why couldn't it be a crystal?
I definitely want to do some research on that. I've been interested in the chemical composition. A lot of crystal guides, you can find like more information on just like what they're used for and whatnot. A lot of the crystal guides also have like their level on the hardness scale. I don't remember the name of it, but like they'll have a level on the hardness scale. Some of them are like dangerous to ingest, and so like they give a warning, because some people will like drink crystal water or something, like plop some crystals in water and drink it.
Oh.
Some crystals, like that's dangerous. And then, but it also goes over the chemical composition and like where they're found. And I wonder, you know, I bet that has a lot to do with their energy as well, is where they're geographically located, because different parts of the world are doing different things. You know, if they're primarily found like maybe in a third world country or an indigenous area, that's going to have totally different vibrations than like a crystal we found in America.
How interesting, because it's infused with whatever's going on in that part of the world.
Maybe.
Oh.
I mean, I think energy has to go somewhere. I don't think that it like completely dissipates. I think that energy is neutral and that it can like translate positive, negative between like what's going on and whatnot. Because we like attach feelings to this energy, which might be like, you know, the electromagnetic field you were talking about. So I think that energy definitely affects what's going on in the world. And so it makes sense that it would affect the earth as well because of that magnetic field.
Yeah, so I'll just share with you because you might not be aware. You said you weren't that into science, but the earth itself has a magnetic field.
Right.
Okay, and it actually shields us from the solar wind. So that's the only way that we're able to like live on this planet is because of the magnetic field. And it comes out and it looks like a donut. I mean, it's in the shape of a donut. So it's called a toroid. So it's like literally this circular shape, and it comes into a central point, which is one dimension. It's like, no, it's two dimensions. It's like a line through the middle of it. So it completely encompasses the whole thing. But it's this toroid shape, and we have the same toroid shape around us.
Ooh.
And also the resonant frequency of this magnetic field corresponds to our brainwave functions of alpha, beta, the gamma, the delta waves or whatever, all the wavelengths.
Yeah.
And it's actually just shifted in the last couple years from, if you would consider like our brain waves of when we're like asleep and when we're kind of like in that dozing, like you're awake, but you're just like zoned almost, right. Zoned out kind of. The earth had been in that kind of like quasi-awake, dreamy state, wavelength forever. And just recently it has risen into I'm awake and moving around, but not really thinking, not really excited or focused, but like awake, moving around, getting my coffee. Like that's the brainwave level that the earth just shifted to.
How recently?
A couple years.
That's so interesting. And that absolutely, I mean, you can't deny there's shit going on in the world. Like there's just absolutely like.
There's an awakening happening.
Yeah.
In humanity, and we're intimately connected with the earth. Now, I don't know the directionality, like the causality is because humans are evolving. Is our field resonating with the earth and bringing the earth into coherence with our emotions and our consciousness rising? Or is something happening with the earth because its magnetic field is a bazillion times stronger than any individual or even collectively all the people on earth? Is something happening with the earth that's raising our consciousness and bringing us into coherence?
So that's really interesting. Have you heard of Rebecca Campbell? Have you read any of her stuff?
I've heard that name, but I'm sure I haven't read anything.
Okay. So she wrote this book called Light is the New Black, and it's all about of light sourcing and like being light workers. And what she connects it to is like us being connected to the universe or to the earth in that intimate way. And she talks about different ways to basically like access energy from the earth to fuel ourselves. Really, really, really interesting. I think that you would enjoy it, like after talking about like all of the magnetic field.
What's her name again?
It's Rebecca Campbell. She has the one book that I read is called Light is the New Black. And then she has another book that I have not read, but it's called Rise, Sister, Rise. And I've heard it's really good as well.
Cool. That's awesome. Oh, I wrote down a little thing when you were talking earlier, when you're saying that you're really empathic. Another explanation for that physiologically is people have what's called mirror neurons, where you're in all of your ways that you can sense things, from seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, any other perceptions on our skin, feeling, our balance, our vestibular system, where we are in space. Like there's sensors like in our muscles that tell us if we're moving or whatever. All these sensations, you're perceiving it from other people or the environment. And when it's from other people, you have what's called mirror neurons, which means that you feel and perceive what other people are experiencing.
Wow.
Like when someone smiles, you kind of automatically smile. When a
Right.
baby starts crying, like the other babies will start crying, even though there's not one damn thing wrong with them.
Right.
And other mammals have this too. Like when one dog starts barking, like all the dogs will bark. This is the mirror neurons. So it's so subtle that we take it for granted. It's like the water that we're swimming in. We don't even really realize it because it's so innate in us. But science has shown that these patterns exist. And some people have more these mirror neurons than other people, and they feel other people's emotions more strongly, and some people feel it less. One of the speculations about autism is that their mirror neurons are not doing what they're supposed to do. And they have a little bit less empathy and a little bit less connection with other people.
That's incredibly fast. My wife works with autistic children. That's her field. That's all she does is work with autistic kiddos and adults. And that absolutely, I just got chills. Like that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about autism, but it's one of the things, as I was reading about mirror neurons, I keep on saying motor neurons, mirror neurons, that they were speculating that this might be one of the mechanisms that causes people to experience autism, because they're, of course, looking for ways to reverse it or alleviate the symptoms. So if it's something that they can figure out how to get the neurons going again, then maybe they can help people. But I don't really know very much more about it than it was just included in the general reading, but it's cool.
That's incredibly fun. Science is so cool.
And they find out more all the time. It's amazing.
You do. And what I also think is interesting is like science and its relation to accessibility for like humans on Earth. So like my wife and I are wanting to get pregnant next year, and we want to do a reverse IVF. So where they take her egg, mix it with a sperm, and then place it in my womb.
Mm-hmm.
And her egg because she can't carry. And so I found out, I thought IVF was like relatively newish, but I found out that it's been around since the 90s. It just wasn't financially like accessible to like middle class normal people. And so I thought that was really, really interesting, is there's this this almost classist piece to it as well. And like I just found out, apparently scientists are now able to literally pick genes when creating an embryo between like hair color, character traits, things like that. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but also like if that is happening and we just don't have any idea, like it's not general knowledge, you really have to go look for it. And I don't think that we have the interest or the platform to learn more about it and like expand our own education, because we're like scrolling through Facebook.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I feel that the internet is a little bit of a double-edged sword. I consider the internet to be magic. It's like, it's possible that the internet is what's causing this rise in consciousness, because if you think about our brain, it's the connection. One brain cell doesn't just connect to one other brain cell. It connects to all the other brain cells, like all over. Like it's not linear at all. So it's multi-dimensional almost when you think about it. How many connections it is kind of makes it expand and expand and expand. When people who were previously not connected because of distance or whatever, used to be we could only connect through time, through books.
Right.
Which is very limited. And then our immediate neighborhood of people. And we might have in the past known 100 people. But now we know thousands of people, and we have access to everyone's books.
Yes.
And so the connections are multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. And when more connections are made, consciousness arises.
That's one thing that Rebecca Campbell talks about, is using social media to raise the vibration, and that this change is happening in the world right now, and that more people are coming awake, and we have like such an incredible platform to do so. So I think that as far as the spirituality movement, I think that Facebook is a great platform. I don't think enough people care about science. And the earth. I think I don't think it's so much a platform. I think maybe it's more they just don't care, or they don't know how to care.
I think it's even, sadly, it's more sinister than that, perhaps. I think people are being distracted and manipulated with their fight or flight reaction. Is being used against them by the media, by powers, by government, by whatever, for purposes that are not their own. If people are constantly in an elevated state of anxiety, they cannot do anything else. That's what our bodies were designed to do, is protect us. And the first thing that we have to do is not die.
Right.
Right? So it's hard to, and our body shows this. When you're in stress, your fertility goes down, your appetite goes down, everything that's involved with your parasympathetic, rest and digest, feed and breed, everything about that is offline when you have anxiety. So where would you be able to have, okay, this is cool. In your inner ear, there's the disconnected bone that's in there is connected to your vagus nerve, the parasympathetic system. And when you're smiling, so that your eyes crinkle, so that you're a true smile, not a fake smile, the muscles that do that move that bone, and it stimulates the nerve, the vagus nerve, to tell your body you're in a safe place among people who care about you, and you can chill and do something else and not worry right now.
That's fascinating.
When you're in a stress state, your whole body changes, your face changes, your concentration changes, and that bone moves to a different spot, and it's not stimulating. And so your sympathetic, your fight or flight is on. And so you're not able to be in a state of empathy with anybody. It's not possible. Because your whole sympathetic is shut off. I keep saying left and right. It's not left and right.
Right.
But it's like kind of, if you don't have any brakes basically left.
Right.
It's your throttle, and it's offline. And so when you're in a constant state of anxiety, if you're being whipped up by the media, if you're being told that your body is not acceptable, if you're overweight, if you're a person of color, if you, whatever, in China, if you wear glasses, that you're no good anymore, if you're disabled, if you're whatever, right? If you're not good enough, and if you have to struggle, then you can't have empathy for anyone else, and you can't make those connections. And I think we're being manipulated. And as soon as people learn to, if they can learn how to use their body as a tool and use some techniques and resist being manipulated a little bit, then they can have room for empathy, and that's where we can start to connect.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense. I love that.
It's so deep, and I'm like, I just doggy paddling.
Yeah, I get that. I get that feeling.
So anyways, that's what's fun. So you're just 2 weeks into starting your business. Like, what are you actually doing? Like, do you have an offer already? Do you already have a client base?
Yeah, so I have offers. So I have two things. I am doing a Magic and Mindset Reset. It launches November 6th. Cart opens. I'm doing soft sells now, but the cart opens October 1st. And so what that is a 5-week masterclass, and each week is different modules on ways to cope and heal from mental illness and trauma and like take care of yourself. So the 5 modules, there's actually a pre-module on journaling because that's a thing by itself. But then the different modules are crystals and chakras, tarot and pendulums, divination for like healing and clarity, setting boundaries and maintaining them, setting your sacred space, like having a space even if you think your place is too small, it's not. And then the other one is meditation and mindset. 5-week intensive. And then I also do one-on-one coaching where we focus just solidly on one-on-one, like that person's issues, like your issues, like, and creating, you know, like modules basically for what, you know, you need to learn, and like accountability for self-care because I need it too. And so that's the 2 things going on right now. I'm probably going to be doing a chakra back to basics training in the next couple weeks or so. But other than that, those are the 2 live offers I have.
That's awesome. What are your price points on that 5-week intensive?
Yeah, for sure. So the 5-week, if paid in full, it's $1,000. Or I can do bi-weekly payment plans of $550.
What did you say was the paid in full?
The paid in full is $1,000. So you basically get $100 off for paying in full. Otherwise, it's 2 bi-weekly payments of $550.
Okay, interesting. That's awesome. And what's your one-on-one like?
My one-on-one, I actually have 3 different packages. They all have payment plans as well. Basically, the super amazing, awesome one is weekly 90-minute coaching calls instead of 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook Messenger access during office hours. Anything that I create, paid content while you're doing VIP coaching is free. So like if you were doing VIP coaching, that mastermind would be free.
Okay.
And then, yeah, that's platinum. And then gold is, the platinum also has like all of my digital content that I've created as well for free. The gold, and that's, let's see, platinum is $19.50 a month, or it can be broken down. Gold is $12.50 a month. It's weekly 60-minute coaching calls, tailored for all of your needs. And then also all of the downloads, and anything like that. There'll also be a Facebook group as well. That one's $12.50 a month. And then I've got silver, and that's just the weekly hour. Actually, it's bi-weekly 60-minute calls, and that's $9.50 a month.
Awesome. And that doesn't include like whatever the other ongoing stuff. It's just like whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How long does someone usually stay with you on the one-on-one? Like how long is the average person do you expect?
I mean, it really just depends on like where they're at in their journey. You know, if it's someone who's like, you know, hey, I have a really good grasp like on self-care, but I'm struggling with like this one thing, like they might do a month or 2. If it's someone, you know, totally new, learning about all the magic, and all of the meditation and everything like that, then that might be a little bit more long term. But ideally, I mean, honestly, I definitely look, when I work with clients one-on-one, I look at a graduation day. It's not something that, you know, it might take 6 months to process or work through some things, but ultimately, like any other like self-care professional, basically, I want to get my client to the point to where like they have this amazing tool belt and they just need support once in a while.
I feel the same way. I have definitely end game in mind where my clients don't need to be on a diet forever. They don't need necessarily coaching forever. Like, I want to be like, you're learning how to do you. And when you get it, you're free, little birdie. You know, you're not going to be in therapy forever. You're not going to be on diet forever. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, my programs are.
Yeah, tell me about the 50 2-week one?
Oh gosh, it's so amazing. Okay. It is an all-inclusive program that has weekly, well, I'll start out. Every 2 weeks, there's a new habit, and every single day, there's a little lesson that relates to that habit. And maybe about half of those little lessons have some reflection questions, and they dig deep. And some people are not prepared, perhaps, for this kind of like intensive on you. They're like, I just want food, and I just want to be told what to eat, and I want to be told what to do, but I'm totally different. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. We're going to find out together what you want to do, what you're going to do, and we're going to start from not being able to do it to being able to do it.
Right.
So the reasons why everyone kind of knows what to do already, maybe intuitively, they know what, I need to get sleep, I need to get vegetables, I need to, whatever the things that I already know that. It's too simple, like doing those things. So every 2 weeks is a habit, a little lesson, and some introspective things that deal with that habit. And then each month, there's a workout program that works different energy systems. So every month you get a new workout as well. And it starts out wherever you are. I mean, from a complete, I never exercised before and I've been sedentary my whole life, to someone who's like, I used to be fit and active, and then I had this desk job and I need to get back there or whatever. Like they're familiar with exercise, maybe, to someone who's maybe a recreational athlete already and taking it to the next level. So I have 8 different programs, 8 for men and 8 for women. And I decide which one, where they're starting and what their goal is. And I just move them through a whole program.
Okay.
That's something that won't crush them. And what I add as kind of my special sauce is it's rest-based. So I work with, if your recovery is sufficient to do the next workout, oftentimes based on biofeedback that we're getting from, I mean, it's easy for me to use the heart rate monitor to get my variability, but if people don't know how to do that, then I have other kind of muscle testing?
Yeah.
Have you heard of that? There's ways that you can do that on yourself with weight. You can kind of muscle test yourself with deadlifts, or a lot of people, if they have a practitioner, they'll do the arm resistance, the like arm thing. But when you do it on yourself, I just do a deadlift.
Yeah.
It's really easy. And then whichever one has you being able to have more range of motion, like that's the exercise that you should do. So I just work with people through what their body is telling them that day, or even, between different styles of the same exercise, which one might be better for them that day. So within the kind of structured exercise, it's extremely personalized within it. And it's cool because it's all on a platform that they can access from any of their devices. So I add a Facebook group. I'm hoping to go to cohorts soon so that I'll be able to have some social support where people are going through the same thing at the same time and can kind of talk to each other, in addition to having group coaching where I really get into, it's a style called motivational interviewing, and it's designed to help people work through their own ambivalence. Like when they want 2 things and they don't really go together, like how to help them move forward through that struggle. So that's the 52-week program. And then I'm developing a stress resilience program, just about vitality in general, where it touches, like the 52-week program is like the deep dive.
Right.
This one is more of like an intensive, where we'll talk about nutrition for a week. We'll talk about breathing for a week. We'll talk about microbiome for a week. We'll talk about, there's some other techniques that I use to help people stimulate their parasympathetic response. So it's kind of like, you don't just exercise like just your biceps, you also exercise your triceps, because you know that they're a system that works together, right? So when people are exercising their sympathetic system all the time through like workouts, dealing with their emotional stress, fighting against environmental stressor toxins or whatever's going on, like we also have to exercise the parasympathetic rest and relax to balance that out. So I have a lot of techniques and exercises that I'm going to be. So this is my flagship program that I'm still developing. So my price points on all these programs, the 52-week program that's kind of all-inclusive, it is currently $19.99.
Okay.
And that's also had been my group point. So I'm about to change because the fitness came online with it. I was doing them separate. So I'm restructuring my pricing at the beginning of next year, and it'll be $29.99. And then for continuity, I'll be able to offer the fitness at a lesser amount. Like maybe it would be $1,500 if someone only wanted the fitness. And then also if someone already has a personal trainer, I'll be able to say, okay, well, we'll just keep it at $19.99 and not put my fitness on there, but you just report back to me, you know, and I'll be in communication with your coach, your trainer. So I have now the option of I can be the trainer and the nutrition coach, or if they already have a personal trainer, I won't be like overstepping into someone's client in that way. So I'm redoing the pricing. And then for my one-on-one, no matter what it is, I always have a minimum of 9 sessions. So if it's one-on-one and they just want a bespoke package, it's $9.99. And if it's a package that I have put together, like a flagship package or a signature package, they still are 16 weeks. So that makes it be 9 meetings. So the initial assessment and then 8 weeks of the modules.
Right.
Or not 8 weeks, 16 weeks of the modules, and we meet 8 times every other week. So it's very similar to the 2 weeks habits.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's very consistent as far as the rhythm of how I work with people to give them time to really absorb like one thing at a time.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So that's where I am right now. Probably after I go to my new price point, I might reset the amount on my one-on-one, but I think I'm just going to see how it goes first. I mean, I want to still keep it where normal, like you say, middle-class people can afford something. If they wanted something, they'll put it on their credit card. And I feel like $3,000 for a year of personal training and, you know, direct connection, like a deep connection. I'm only going to take small groups. Like that will really help people. And still it's accessible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's beautiful. I really like that.
Yeah. I know some people are offering services like similar to what I am, and they're like $7,000, $8,000. And I felt like if that was me that needed it, that might be outside of my reach.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Cause I don't know many people with like $10,000 credit card limits.
I know. Exactly.
Like what you have is so incredibly valuable.
I have a Facebook business page and 2 groups, 2 free groups. One of them is private for the nutrition and fitness because people really talk about personal issues and it needs to be a little bit more safe space. And then I have one that's a public group and it's called Feeling Good. And it's really just about putting out energy of acceptance. Like people are going through stuff. Here's the inspirational quote or my thought on this little whatever. And it's lighthearted and serious at the same time and doesn't have a lot of interaction, but it's just me putting out energy.
Yeah, me too.
This has been the best conversation. It's been like 2 hours.
No, I was like looking at the time because my wife was like checking on me.
So I will, I'm going to hit stop recording and let us get on with our day, and I'll send this over to you. I'll send you the link. Come on, Mouse.